What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today we are doing a ultimate weapons tier list. Now I've already done one of these tier lists back when I hit 1,500 hours of playtime, and I'm now currently standing on 2,200 hours. And never mind the fact that 700 hours have passed since that in terms of playtime, a lot has also happened to ultimate weapons in the game. First of all, we have a lot more of them now. We're standing at a grand total of 31 of these weapons which are currently available to be crafted in the game. Also, a lot of these weapons which used to be considered meta have kind of like fallen to the wayside and have been replaced by either new ultimate weapons or ultimate weapons which used to be shitty but are actually pretty good right now because they've been changed and just generally made better. So it's absolutely time for us to do another one of these lists. Now, bear in mind, these tend to take a lot of time. It is 31 weapons. There's a lot of us, like information and things like that we're going to go through. So buckle up and let's get started with the tier list. So first things first, let's just go ahead and discuss the different layers of the tier list. Of course, at the very top, we have meta or must craft. These are weapons which are currently the meta in the game and which essentially are necessary for you to have for doing specific activities in the game. It's not to say that you cannot proceed without these weapons, but they will most of the time basically make a specific task that you're trying to do a lot more efficient or just generally a lot more easier. So these are really good weapons for you to target. If you're a new player starting out and you're lost, like there's 31 fucking weapons to craft and you're like, what the hell? These are ones that you should be working towards because they feature in a lot of builds and they're used to do a lot of things in the game. Second category is strong, and that's just basically that. So it's a weapon that's not necessarily meta, but is strong, especially within its class. A very good example of this would be something like if you take all of the assault rifles, like the best assault rifle might not necessarily be a weapon that you use in the meta, but it is the strongest assault rifle, and therefore it deserves to be seen as that. It can also be that this weapon might just have a very strong ultimate effect, and of course that can also be something that puts it into this category. Okay means weapons that generally are performing all right. They might not be as exciting as some of the weapons that are above them in the top two tiers. They also might not be as strong or as meta defining, but the weapons are performing adequately and therefore they're kind of like almost like in a way where they need to be. Now of course we know that they can't always just be meta weapons and they can't always just be shit weapons. So weapons can usually what happens, at least what I've seen, is that weapons that are in the okay category or in the ass category, which is the fourth one, are the ones which are usually looked at by the developer and essentially brought up in terms of quality. Speaking of ass, my fourth category here is weapons which are just not good. Now, the not good part is kind of in a way like subjective, I think, because the thing is there's a hidden criteria here, and that's also just a me thing. So what you might potentially think is a really strong weapon or even an okay weapon or maybe even a meta weapon, I don't like, because yes it's meta, yes it's this, yes it's that, but it might just not be a weapon that I enjoy using. Now luckily there's not a lot of weapons in this category, so I don't worry, there's not going to be too many ones here which upset people, but the bottom line is there's also such a thing as like fun factor and just general enjoyment of using the weapon, and of course that can dump it into this category if it is not fun to use. And then last but not least, don't bother crafting is of course that category exactly as said. So a weapon which I don't think is worth you spending time and effort to farm out and get, and that could be because it's either not fun to use or it's terrible to use or it's incredibly weak or it's basically completely overshadowed by better options. Again, not a lot of weapons in this category. I think we'll go through it as we go along and then we'll figure it out. But we're going to go through it alphabetically, and we're going to start off with Afterglow Sword. So Afterglow Sword is of course a sniper rifle. Now Afterglow Sword and I believe it's Piercing Light were the first two sniper rifles that we had in the game, and Piercing Light was better in certain situations and Afterglow was better in other situations. Now since then we've gotten another new sniper rifle which is 8x, and that means that kind of like Afterglow Sword has fallen away from me a little bit. Now I think Afterglow Sword is a perfectly functional sniper rifle, so it's definitely okay, and in certain situations, I mean the point is, like, let's say the first 6 or 7 Void Intercept bosses that you can fight, pretty much you can kill them with any weapon. Afterglow Sword has places in, you know, specific builds where you capitalize on how hard it can potentially hit. But that being said, it is unfortunately overshadowed by better options, and so therefore I think Afterglow Sword is just unfortunately Okay. Next, we have Albion Cavalry Gun, or Henry Cavill Gun. All right, so this thing is actually in a way exceptionally strong. And in the early days of Void Purge or Purge, essentially this was a really good weapon to run with Haley because of it having had been revisited by the developer and its unique ability, essentially allowing it to stun, enemies around the target that you're shooting, and so therefore it was a great way for you to disable groups of enemies, and so this weapon was really good. Now, unfortunately, once again, and I have a feeling I'm going to be saying this for a lot of weapons in this list, it has since been replaced by what is just better options. That does not make this a shit weapon. This also does not make it a weak weapon. It's just there's better choices for you out there. But that being said, Albion Cavalry Gun is still exceptionally strong, and I definitely have to put it in the strong category. If not for the other two weapons which I'm going to mention, then this would have definitely been meta. I think there's probably going to be some people who are going to disagree with me and still think it's meta, but unfortunately it has kind of like fallen off a little bit, but still super strong weapon. Next up, we have Ancient Knight, and that's the most recent rifle that was added to the game. And basically, this in combination with Serena is an exceptionally strong option for you in terms of dealing with Void Intercept bosses, and also the previous boss that we had in the Abyss was also just absolutely fucking dumpstered by this. Now, for the longest of times, I've had an issue with the assault rifles in the game. I'm happy to say that that's not necessarily the case anymore. They just did not feel good for me. LMGs were better for me. Submachine guns were better for me. But in the case of Ancient Knight, it's not the most exciting weapon. I mean, kind of like the most exciting thing about it is it's modeled after AK-47, but it is an extremely capable assault rifle, and essentially, putting it in the hands of, like I said, someone like Serena makes it just absolutely demolish certain Void Intercept bosses, and I'm sure that there's going to be more bosses in the future which are also going to be just kind of like folding like fucking paper to this gun. But I do believe that at least of each weapon type, we need to consider one of them being potentially meta, and while Ancient Knight is not as strong as some of the other weapons which I'm going to put into the meta category, it is a very strong option when it comes to an AR, and therefore it absolutely deserves a spot up here, even if it's not as strong as it is now as it was with the previous Abyss boss, for example. Next, we have ATAMS. Now, ATAMS is a sniper rifle, and again, I think this will be a recurring theme. I'll probably mention Serena a lot. And it's not just the case for Serena. Of course, there are other Descendants that can also benefit from using these weapons. I just speak about the strongest option, and that, generally speaking, when it comes to weapons, is Serena, at the very least at this point in the game when I'm recording this video. But ATAMS was able to almost one-tap most bosses, including group bosses in, let's say, the previous half season. I don't know, season 2's had like 5 fucking parts in it or something like that, but the previous Abyss boss season, part of season 2, like 2.2 or whatever the hell. Anyways, ATAMS is, out of the 3 snipers that are currently in the game, the strongest one, and it just deals an exceptional amount of damage, especially if you couple it with a Descendant that is a weapons-based Descendant like Serena, for example. So absolutely a meta option here. Always good to have a sniper rifle available, and this is definitely the strongest one that you can field in the game right now. Next up, we have Blue Beetle. Now, Blue Beetle is, generally speaking, a stat stick. Okay, there are a few weapons in this game which you carry on your Descendant, not necessarily because you want to shoot with the gun, but rather because you want to get the benefit of the effect that it's offering to you for any of the skills that you're using. Now, Blue Beetle is absolutely a stat stick. It's not a shitty gun to use at all. It's actually one of my more favorite stat sticks to use in the game, but nonetheless, it is still just a stat stick. Now, that being said, it is, I would say, an exceptionally strong stat stick, and so therefore it does belong in the strong category. Again, the weapon itself, from a perspective of dealing damage with its bullets, it does not necessarily measure up to some of the other weapons which are in the strong category, but as a stat stick, it's one of the better ones in the game, and absolutely worth using if you need something like that. Then next we have clairvoyance. No, I have like a love hate, love hate relationship with beam rifles in this game. When we saw Voltia come out, I kind of like changed my mind a little bit. And there's bound to be some people that are gonna tell me like, dude, fuck you. Like clairvoyance is the shit. But I think clairvoyance is almost for me in between like okay and ass, and that's partly due to the fact that it's not a fun weapon for me to use. I don't like beam rifles, and then secondly, I just think like there are better options for you out there if you are wanting to use a beam rifle. That being said, in terms of power level, and especially combined with certain descendants, especially like ice or freeze based descendants, clairvoyance is really good, and so therefore it should at the very least be in the okay category, and therefore I cannot like demote it to the ass category. But be careful, clairvoyance, you were almost in the ass category. Next up is divine punishment, which coincidentally is ass. So again, like I said, ARs are not like in the best place, or weren't in the best place in the game for a very long time. Divine punishment is unfortunately a weapon that has kind of been left to the wayside. It absolutely deserves some kind of a revisit. I can't recall now off the top of my head if it has already been adjusted once. I believe it already has, and it's still just not it. So unfortunately, not a strong option for an AR, and absolutely is overshadowed by something like Ancient Knight, and so therefore I don't think it's I wouldn't say don't craft it just yet. Actually, you know what? Fuck that shit. Yeah, don't build Divine Punishment. Why would you want to build Divine Punishment if you have Ancient Knight? I'm just trying to rack my brain as to why I wouldn't just put this in the don't bother crafting category. Yeah, fuck that. Okay, I just figured that out like, in real time. But yes, no, don't bother crafting Divine Punishment. Just go straight for Ancient Knight. You don't need it. It's just absolutely Ancient Knight is just better in every single regard. Next up, we have Enduring Legacy. Now, Enduring Legacy is a very sore topic for me in a way, and that's because for the longest time in the preseason as well as in season one, it was in many ways my favorite weapon and also the weapon I used the most. It's just a really strong LMG. It's just a really strong weapon in general. And yeah, I loved fielding it on Enzo and on weapon-based descendants. I absolutely enjoyed using it. And that was that. Then obviously we had better options come around, and it has not necessarily been touched. I believe they increased its fire damage a little bit at some point with one of the patches, but other than that, it hasn't really been messed with all that much. And unfortunately, it fucking breaks my heart, but I think Enduring Legacy is just okay now. It's definitely not ass okay, but it's definitely not strong. It pains me to say, but Albion Cavalry Gun is a far superior weapon to Enduring Legacy. Yes, Enduring Legacy has some things which it does better, like I guess it shoots faster and fucking, I don't know, set shit on fire, whatever. But from a utility perspective, Albion Cavalry Gun gives a lot more utility and just overall is better. So yes, I do still like every once in a while jumping in and killing like a lowly Void Intercept boss with Enduring Legacy and remembering the fun times when it was the shit. But unfortunately, those times have also passed, and so has Enduring Legacy's time in the sun. Alrighty, and then next up we have Excava. Now, Excava is another one of those weapons that in the earlier days of Void Purge was really good. If you paired it with someone like Haley or something like that, and this is of course before Serena was around, you could absolutely power your way through a bunch of the higher tier Void Purge stages, and that's because it was really good at dealing elemental damage. And of course, we very soon realized that the higher levels of Void Purge needed like massive elemental damage stacking to be able to drill through the fucking health pools that those enemies had. So Escava was instrumental in that to a degree, and if I did this tier list before Serena was around and before the state that the game is in now, but let's say right at the beginning of Void Purge, I would have absolutely put it in as a meta option. That being said, since then we have Serena, we also have some other weapons and everything like that, so it has kind of like fallen off a little bit. That's again not to say that it's not a really good weapon to field, and it's for that reason that we can definitely stack it into the strong category, because it is a strong elemental option for you still, but just not quite there at the meta. Then we have Fallen Hope, another AR. So Fallen Hope is kind of like a fucking, I don't know, like it's again, it has absolutely been saved with the introduction of the multi-stat. So multi-hit and multi-hit damage is what has actually made this weapon really, really good now. And I actually think it's one of the weapons in the game that is a little bit slept on at the moment. It is exceptionally good at dealing decent multi-hit damage. I think it's the third or the fourth highest multi-hit damage base in the game. And so therefore it actually just pushes out a lot of damage if you build it into that. The difference, or the reason I guess why a lot of people might not be in on the whole Fallen Hope game, is because a lot of people have kind of like gravitated multi-hit towards like the newer weapons that have come out, and have potentially not revisited the old weapons and seen what these stats can do for those. Fallen Hope is an exceptional example for this. I actually have later in the week, hopefully if all goes well, a build video dropping for this. But Fallen Hope with multi-hit mods on is really, really good. It's not meta. It's not meta. It might become meta at some point, but it's not meta quite yet. But it is really, really fun to use. It just absolutely flattens health bars and is a good option to run, you know, just as something that if you're playing a skill-based build, you're just killing everything AoE already, but you get like a pesky yellow bar enemy that pops up and your skills take too long to kill it, or, you know, you have to recast a bunch of times. Just whip this sucker out, spray the enemy, and they will absolutely fucking evaporate. So definitely a strong category there. Then we have Executor. Now, Executor and Smithereens are, let's say, the two options really when it comes to. They're not the only shotguns in the game, but they're the two options when it comes to essentially using. Now, I think that there's a camp of people which think Executor is like the tits, and then there's a camp of people who think Smithereens is the best. Now, for me, Executor is good, but it's also just in a way okay, because I personally think that Smithereens is the superior. I mean, I don't think I'm the only one who thinks so, but it's the superior shotgun. And so therefore, yes, it's kind of like in between okay and strong. I kind of like feel bad putting Executor in the okay category, because then it sits next to something like Afterglow Sword and Clairvoyance and, yeah, unfortunately, Enduring Legacy. And I do think that it performs better than those three weapons. So this one would be, if there was another category between strong and okay, I would put Executor there. But for now, it leans more towards strong than it does towards okay. And so therefore, we're going to go ahead and pop that sucker in there. Now, next up is Frostwatcher. Now, Frostwatcher and me, we have a checkered past. I've tried for the longest time to make this weapon work and feel great on Haley. I have failed miserably along the way. I have obviously made builds for it, and these builds are functional, but they're just not fun to play. It's not a fun weapon to use. Its mechanic is fucking clunky, and it's just not great. It might be the reason that I created the ass category in the first place, is this fucking gun, and it absolutely fucking belongs in there. I feel the weapon type is completely wrong. Like, it should be a different weapon type. Everything about this gun is just fucking weird. Like, it should have been a submachine gun, or at the very least a fucking AR or something. But yeah, it's just not fun to use, and like I said, the effect is super clunky to play around and everything. So fucking no thank you. Bye-bye. Then Greg's Reverse Fate, another weapon which was good. At least it was a sleeper. Then they modified it a little bit, and I think they fixed, like, there was some bug, and I'm talking like pre-season or beginning of season 1. There was some bug where the falling fire shit was not correctly working. I struggle to remember now. My brain's fucking mush. But the point is, they fixed it, and then it became really good. Now, I still think it's a decent weapon. The only issue is it is one of the weapons that has like the biggest hate in the community, because before there was an option for you to disable, your allies' weapon effects and all of that stuff. This weapon was the reason why people would be like, dude, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Is the boss shooting at me? The shit is flying everywhere. It's falling everywhere. It's blowing up my PC. It's making my PlayStation play fucking slower. This is the reason. Believe it or not, Greg's Reverse Fate is the reason why that setting exists in the game of disabling your allies' weapon effects. It's absolutely this fucking gun. So, unfortunately, it has the stigma attached to it. When people see you use it, they're like, dude, this gun is shit. The other thing is also that on not all Void Intercept bosses, it might even be all Void Intercept bosses, maybe you just kill them too fast. But the point is, it also enrages. It hits the frenzy timer on bosses, it makes it go a lot faster. So, a lot of the times, if you are someone who perhaps does not know when is the right time to use this weapon, you could end up using it in a group setting with a Void Intercept boss and inadvertently force the frenzy timer a lot faster than the team would want you to, and therefore, kind of like become very unpopular. So, look, I would definitely say this weapon is, again, it feels like it's between strong and okay. I don't constantly want to have this argument with myself where I'm like, okay, is it strong? Is it okay? I do feel that it has also fallen off a little bit like Enduring Legacy. Not quite as meteoric as Enduring Legacy, but nonetheless it has. And it's for that reason that I feel like it should stand next to its buddy. It should stand over there next to Enduring Legacy, and that's where we put it. Next up, we have the most recent shotgun that was added to the game, Hammer and Anvil. Conceptually, I really like the idea of this weapon's ultimate effect, and I kind of like thought that it might be really good. I have to be honest though, I basically developed it and tried one or two different, builds with it and so on, and I kind of felt myself still going back to smithereens. That's not to say it's not a strong shotgun. It's unfortunately in a case where, you have need for a shotgun in the game and you don't necessarily want to develop 3 fucking shotguns, then unfortunately it just doesn't quite make the list. So it's definitely not meta. I believe Executor is stronger than it, even just by a little bit, and so that means that by default it should fall to the okay category. Now, I do also want to say that as you can see, as we are building out the okay category here, the point is that I believe that these weapons are all really, really good candidates to be looked at by the developer and potentially tweaked in a certain way, which could bring them to the strong category or even possibly the meta category, and most likely that is what is going to happen. So that being said, at the moment right now, it just unfortunately is not quite there. Kingsguard Lance. This weapon had the community in a mad rush to develop after it was tweaked. It essentially went from a weapon that nobody ever fucking invested any resources in whatsoever to something that everybody was using because it was just so awesome, the ultimate effect. So its original ultimate effect only produced one of these little fucking towers, and then they obviously made Kingsguard Lance better, and so then you could have 3 towers available at once, and this made a lot of the farming content and point control content and stuff like that, special operations and so on, a lot easier, because Descendants who did not necessarily have good AoE killing capabilities had a weapon that they could use that would essentially allow them to deal AoE damage to large groups of enemies, and with relative ease, and essentially you would just have your 3 little turrets and keep them up. So yeah, it's like the weapon version of Jaber if Jaber was cool. But Jaber is a piece of shit, and so therefore we have a gun that is essentially, much better than Jaber could ever be. I said it. But that being said, it is a weapon that has kind of fallen off. There are still some devotees that use Kingsguard Lance a lot. I've seen some interesting things on YouTube and stuff where guys kind of do weird fucking setups with it and everything like that. But nonetheless, it has obviously fallen off a little bit, and so therefore I do believe that it also belongs in the okay category. It might even be strong, but that's only in certain situations, and it's for that reason that I only put it in okay. But please bear in mind, it's kind of strong and it's kind of okay, so it's kind of somewhere there in the middle. Next up, we have Malevolent. Now, Malevolent, right off the bat, I'm just going to go ahead and drag that fucker into meta. Some people might disagree with me. Actually, I hope nobody does, because you're fucking dead wrong. This weapon is meta in absolutely every single way in which the word meta fucking works, right? First of all, it turns every Descendant good at killing massive amounts of enemies. Some Descendants by default are good at killing groups of enemies, are good at mobbing Innes, Freyna, and so on. And then some Descendants have no fucking way to fight large groups of enemies. And so therefore you need a weapon that can help you to do that. In comes Malevolent. Malevolent is essentially just a gun that shoots a bunch of blades and kills lots of enemies. It is the only weapon that I run consistently when I do group-based content, or let's rather say mobbing-based content in the game, because it's just so easy. It's fire and forget. The blades kill fucking everything. You move on with your life. Then that would make the gun good already. But considering also that this weapon coupled with Serena is one of the easiest ways for you to do top end of game void purge fucking levels with super ease, then that is the reason why this is a meta weapon. So it's not just the fact that it's usable on every Descendant and it makes every Descendant a fucking mobbing god, but it's also because it is used at the tippy top of the most difficult void purge content in the game right now, which you absolutely have to do if you want to farm the materials that you need for essentially modding up your weapons. If you want to farm that most efficiently and basically get the most of that, there's a very easy way for you to do it, and that is to build Serena and then build this gun and smash the two together. The build's on my fucking channel, and you can basically do this in the fastest time ever. You'll be amazed just how quickly you melt enemies. So super good weapon. I think I've basically, blown it up enough. Nazestra's Devotion. Here's another weapon which was kind of like in group-based content goated back in the day. It feels like when I say back in the day, this game's been around for like many years, but it hasn't. That being said, Nazestra's is a debuffing weapon that essentially lets you strip the defense of the enemy away that you're using. Now, for that reason, this is not a weapon that you would use to mob, right? This is not something that you would run around and shoot stuff. I'm sure there's going to be some people going like, bro, this is like my favorite gun and it's the only gun I use and I just run around fucking shooting everything with my big magnum. And I'm like, cool. But generally speaking, you use this weapon to debuff super strong enemies, and especially if you're playing in a group, you could be the debuffer and somebody else could be the person that does damage, and so therefore, you'll be like, I don't know, like fucking, you'll shoot this and then Luna will juice up the fucking group, and then the other two Descendants will absolutely demolish the boss. At least that's the way how it's supposed to work. It's fallen away though, and that's because the meta in the game has in a way shifted to, because we have Descendants like Serena and because we have weapons like ATAMs and some of the other ones, that generally speaking group play is not about this almost like strategic setup anymore. I think people do this for the memes these days, where you have a group of 4 people and one guy is the guy that debuffs, another guy is that, because they try to pull off the best fucking one tap or the fastest 2-second kill on like a void intercept boss or something like that. But the meta itself in the game has essentially changed to like this all-in fucking deal as much damage as possible at the beginning, all guns fucking blazing like playstyle. And in that playstyle, you don't really see people running around with Nazestras anymore. I still think it's a fucking strong weapon, and it's really good at stripping off defenses off of a boss. There's just not many applications for that in the game right now. And that's why I have to throw this in the okay category. It has a really strong debuff effect, but that's really the only thing that it's good for. If you're running around with this thing trying to kill mob groups of enemies, then you're literally just making your life harder for no reason. So unfortunately, Nazestra has fallen away. Next up is Peacemaker. Now, Peacemaker is also a stat stick. And that being said, it's a really strong stat stick. But I personally have a massive issue with this weapon because unlike other stat sticks in the game, like Secret Garden and Blue Beetle, who I actually enjoy using just to shoot, I fucking detest shooting this gun. And it's for this reason that I really fight with the rating for this weapon, because that's very much a personal thing. And I know that if I say to you, hey, don't fucking craft this, which I'm not going to do, but I'm saying, like, if I was to say that, I would be depriving you of a very strong stat stick. But I just want to go on record here saying that it is a fucking terrible gun to shoot, and I do not like shooting it at all. But that being said, it is a very consistent, strong stat stick for non-attribute Descendants, like, for example, Ajax or Valby, and so therefore it deserves its place on the rating, and it needs to be next to the other stat sticks like Blue Beetle, if only for that reason. Then we have Perforator. Now, Perforator is a funny one. Perforator was one of the weapons that was revisited, and its revisited form actually deals quite a bit of damage because it's essentially like, I don't know, it's like a hand cannon or handgun version of Greg's Reverse Fate, and in some ways, I don't know, actually better. But the other reason why it's used is it's actually used as a faux sniper in like Haley snipe builds, right? So it's got some, utility, some multiple uses there. I do unfortunately believe, though, that it's obviously not meta, and again, I feel like it's somewhere between strong and okay. It definitely, I think it probably performs better than, I don't know, Kingsguard Lance, Enduring Legacy, and Greg's Reverse Fate. But again, like I said, it's kind of like a mini Greg's Reverse Fate for me. And so therefore, I gotta go with just okay. I think it needs to be brought up a little bit. It's a fun weapon to use from even though hand cannons and handguns, I don't necessarily enjoy them in this game, but its unique ability is kind of cool, and fucking just all these explosions and everything like that is pretty dope. So, yeah, for that reason, I think it's okay, but yeah, unfortunately, just not quite there. Then we have, I guess it's our last sniper rifle in the list, which is Piercing Light. And so Piercing Light is, of course, used in Haley snipe builds. I don't really know if there's anything else that, like Sharon, I guess, maybe. But I don't know if there's a lot of other uses for it outside that. For that reason, I mean, I think I'm starting to revisit some of my ratings here. Like, for example, in a world where 8 exists, and you only have enough resources and enough time and enough fucking want in your life to craft one sniper rifle, absolutely you should craft 8 next up should probably be Piercing Light, and then third should probably be Afterglow. However, I see that I have Afterglow in okay. And if I'm going to put Piercing Light in Don't Bother Crafting, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. Yeah, I think if I'm going to put Afterglow in okay, then I need to do the same thing with Piercing Light. They're not as good as 8 but they have specific use cases where they're good. And in those cases, in those specific use cases, they shine very well. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. From that, we go to a meta option, which is Restored Relic. Now, launchers, much like beam rifles, is something which I don't necessarily think is fun to use in this game. That being said, the unique ability of Restored Relic is what fixes it in a way and actually makes it usable. And this was one of the weapons that was revisited, and so therefore Restored Relic can essentially become like a fucking minigun that shoots rockets. Which is absolutely a thing. I think you can get its fire rate up to like 550 or 600, which is just fucking bonkers for a rocket launcher. And therefore, I mean, you can use this thing at the moment right now. It's one of the 3 weapons which is very, very meta in dealing with the challenge Abyss boss as well as just the normal Abyss boss in the game right now. And there's no reason to think that this isn't going to be the case going forward. So it's probably a good idea for you to develop Restored Relic rather sooner than later. It is going to make some of these challenging boss fights, some of these Abyss bosses and stuff like that absolutely fall fucking over. And so for that reason alone. Never mind the fact that it was also heavily used in Void Purge. Maybe still is. I think mostly I see people running around with Malevolent now. But Restored Relic absolutely did exceptionally well in Void Purge as well. And so therefore, again, that's its reason for being in the meta. Python is a submachine gun. And Python is like, I don't know. It's not as good as Secret Garden, but it's not completely shite. That being said, it is unfortunately a weapon that is plagued with with 2 big problems in my opinion. First of all, it has an insanely high fire rate, which isn't a problem by itself, but that coupled with a small fucking magazine size is a fucking problem. You spend more time reloading the gun than you spend fucking shooting it. Of course, some of this stress could be alleviated by increasing your magazine size and so on and so forth, but you kind of never really run out of the fucking problem that this weapon has, and that's the fact that you just spend an awful lot of time reloading the bitch instead of actually shooting it. And that tends to be frustrating. However, it does deal a decent amount of damage. It's definitely not meta. It's definitely not strong. I believe it's just okay. All right. Then, next up, we have Secret Garden, also another stat stick, albeit a stat stick which I also enjoy shooting because it has very high base crit hit damage as well as crit hit chance values, which means with mods you can build it to crit pretty much all the time almost, and so therefore it actually hits like a Mack truck. The damage is really nice, and then coupled with it does wonders for any descendant that deals tech damage, because it essentially makes that tech damage deal a lot more damage because it is a stat stick. So I think that in that case, look, some of the best descendants in the game are tech descendants. They deal tech damage. All right. And for that reason, Secret Garden can elevate those descendants, their damage profile, quite significantly. Yes, there are other ways to get power as well, and now that we have arc tuning and all of that shit and everything like that, some people might even go like, well, you don't need Secret Garden anymore, you could just run whichever gun you want, you're dealing enough damage, everything's fucking dying, like who cares. But that being said, there can be cases where, for example, you are leveling a descendant and maybe you're still busy building it up, right? And so therefore you don't have all the mods on it yet, and you still have to do a lot of the changing of your mod board. In other words, you're busy leveling up a descendant from scratch, and in that case, carrying Secret Garden can give you enough damage that descendant, even though it's not fully leveled yet, feels functional in such a way. For what it's worth, my whole fucking speech here is that Secret Garden is somewhere between strong and meta for me. The only reason why I would consider it meta is because, like I said, some of the best descendants in the game are tech descendants. Their damage is text-based. And so, therefore, this gun tends to be like an auto-include for those descendants, which, again, is kind of like what meta means. It means it's, really strong and is heavily flavored in many different builds. So for that reason, I'm going to drop it into meta, but it might also be just like a little bit closer to strong. But for now, we're going to leave it in meta. Then we have Sigvore's Proof, which for a while I was like, is this, I can't remember, is this a rocket launcher or is it a fucking beam rifle? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's a rocket launcher. That should be indicative to you of just exactly what I think of this rocket launcher, because yes, it is a rocket launcher. Do not bother crafting this. In a world where Restored Relic exists and you have limited resources and limited time, spend that time to develop Restored Relic. You do not need Sigvore's Proof. And I know now, as I say this, that fucking with the next 2 or 3 patches, they're gonna revisit Sigvore's Proof. They're gonna make it super fucking sick, and then for the rest of the time, I'm gonna have people coming into the comments of this video going like, dude, you really fucked it up. Like you really said like Sigvore's Proof was like the worst weapon ever, and it's like the only weapon that people use now. And then at that point, I'll say you're welcome, because clearly that's the bad luck that I have with saying something like that and then allowing the weapon to be buffed and made awesome. So let it happen. But for now, Sigvore's Proof is don't bother crafting. Leave that shit alone. Alright, with that, the end is in sight. We've got the last 7 weapons to go. So Smithereens is the next one up. Now, I've actually said a lot about Smithereens already, so I think you can kind of like figure out where I'm going to take this. At the moment right now, I believe the meta loadout for doing, and again, the point is, let's say for the majority of the content in the game, you can pretty much use any weapon you want. But if you want to do the challenge mode with the Abyss Boss or just the normal Abyss Boss, generally speaking, your loadout will be something like Smithereens, Restored Relic, and one other weapon which we've yet to discuss. And so therefore, you can guess what I'm going to do, and that is that I'm going to drop this into the meta category. From a shotgun perspective, it is a very, very strong option. But also, just in general, it's just a very, very strong weapon, regardless of the fact of it being a shotgun. Coupled with certain descendants like Serena, Glay, and so on, it becomes an absolute fucking, I don't know, melt machine, and for that reason, it needs to be in this list. Then we have the final masterpiece, a bit of like a meme weapon. It was one of the ones which was also revisited, and so therefore it kind of like it saw some use. It essentially flips through elements and deals that element, and each element has a different effect, from making a fucking pool of poison to freezing shit to making an explosion. But unfortunately, it's just not enough. In the game today, we are plagued at certain levels with certain contents with enemies with exceptionally high life pools, right? HP pools. And so therefore you need weapons that can focus into either a lot of damage, a lot of elemental, or something like that. And if you have a weapon that deals all 4 elements, it makes it very difficult to focus into one particular element that you need or something like that. And because the weapon cycles the elements, it's, it's again, like I said, it's a meme weapon. Now it's a fun meme weapon, I'll give it that. But that being said, it is just a meme weapon. It's definitely not meta, it's definitely not strong, so we can go ahead and put it in the okay category. Then we have the exact opposite to everything that I've been saying so far, and that is the last dagger. There has not been a weapon, in my opinion, in the game that has seen a bigger change from like irrelevant, fucked up, and like unusable to like meta as hell as the last dagger. Essentially, this weapon is very, very good in a weapon-based Descendant like Serena, Glay, and so on, especially Glay. It's almost like it feels like it was made for Glay. But this gun deals a huge amount of damage and just absolutely shreds health bars. And again, like I said, in the meta today, the 3-punch combo, if you want to put it that way, is Restored Relic, Smithereens, and Last Dagger for the Abyss boss. And so therefore, obviously, it needs to be there. Now, that package, that weapons package, Restored Relic, Smithereens, and Last Dagger, will work on every single boss, in my opinion, unless there's some other new system that they bring into the game that kind of like negates the strengths that these 3 weapons brings to a fight. So that means that this weapon is locked in to be good for while, and it has been good for a while. So for that reason, you absolutely should craft yourself this gun. If you haven't used this shit on Glade to absolutely cut a boss down, then I feel like you've been missing out. Then we have Thunder Cage. Thunder Cage is like the first ultimate weapon that literally 99% of the player population will craft, because the game kind of like guides you to it. That being said, it is a very good newbie weapon in terms of like when you're just starting out and you're playing your way through normal mode. Once you craft this and you upgrade this and you keep this upgraded, this weapon will carry you all the way through normal mode, which you have to play to get to hard mode. And then even when you get to hard mode, this is just a really effective submachine gun to do quests and missions and stuff like that with, because it absolutely blows up groups of enemies. It shoots fast, it shoots hard, it crits often. It's just, it's juicy. So I've got maybe like 3 or 4 different build videos for Thunder Cage on the channel. It is a fan favorite. But that being said, there's also nothing that really makes this weapon special. It definitely isn't meta. It absolutely is strong, but again, in certain situations, it's definitely better than Python. And so therefore, I do believe that Thunder Cage should be in the strong category. But it can just as easily slip to the okay category, because again, like I said, it's a functional weapon that does what it's supposed to do well, but there's not really anything exciting about it. That being said, when you go onto the ship, this is one of the better weapons to use because of its AoE explosions. It clears fucking weapon-based shields off of enemies and all that stuff, so it's really good for that. And like I said, it just deals a shitload of damage as well. So yeah, shoots really fast, reloads really fast, has a decent magazine size. So yeah, so strong category it is. Voltia is next, and yes, this is a beam rifle. So instead of me going through my usual preamble about beam rifles and how shit they are, I will say that Voltia was one of those cases where I was wrong. Voltia was, for a while, when the ship was the content that we had to do over and over and over, Voltia was very, very meta at that point in time. Voltia is not a weapon that you would generally drag into a boss fight, but when it comes to mobbing content, it is a very, very strong option, because at the time that Voltia came around, shields on fucking mobs came around as well, and Voltia is exceptionally good at cracking those shields. So for that reason, it is a very good weapon for that particular task. And if you are going to craft a beam rifle, this is the one that you should craft. I do believe, however, that again, I keep saying this on many weapons that this has been the case, but it's somewhere between strong and okay. For its functional use case and what it's supposed to do, Vulture is very strong. But outside of that, it's a weapon that you would never really use. Like, there's like literally a list of weapons above this weapon that you would use in bossing content, for example, or something like that. But that being said, I also understand that not every weapon in this game is made to be good at both bossing and mobbing, and for that reason, I also have to be a little bit more forgiving. I do believe Voltia is a strong candidate, though. It's more strong than it is okay. And for that reason, I mean, it's definitely more functional than, I don't know, something like Python, right? So, yeah, we got to put it in that category. Second last weapon we can discuss is Wave of Light. Wave of Light is another one of these, like, it has a very, very good effect, which was also revisited, so it's better than it used to be. It used to be fucking terrible. It's better now, but again, it has a very, very particular use case, and it is also, in a way, a little bit clunky. I think this is a weapon that's more suited for single play than it is for group play. Because of the way how you want the ultimate ability to work, and so therefore you cannot necessarily have other players fucking interfering. And for that reason, it's kind of like, yeah, I know people are gonna be upset, like, for me putting this in the ass category, but it's like, it's not just that it's not an exciting weapon for me to use, and maybe, I'd be like, cool, it's strong, but it's just not necessarily fun to play, so therefore I'll put it in the okay category, which means hopefully they revisit it and do some things to it, whatever, and then make it fucking strong or make it better. But there's just a lot of things that I don't like about the gun versus things that I like about it. Yes, it does hit like a Mack truck if you invoke the ultimate ability correctly. And again, given the right set of circumstance, this thing can absolutely fucking demolish, chunky enemies. But I also, again, like I said, it has a very particular use case. It's not necessarily very good at mobbing content. Its magazine size is way too small, in my opinion, even after fucking modding it and everything like that. And I also just think like it has a terrible core distribution. So lots of things that I don't like about it. So it's unfortunately in the ass category. There's a lot of things that needs to change with this weapon before, I think it's cool. Last but not least is Truly Deadly Arson, TDA. So this is also a beam rifle. In my opinion, a little bit of a meme weapon. I know there are going to be people that are angry with me saying this, because there are certain cases where this gun is super fun to use and kind of like fucking disgusting. A good example would be something like Lepic with his tractor ball, because the point is you want enemies bunched up and almost like standing in a line together as much as possible with this weapon if you want to really show off its power. And nothing does that quite like the fucking tractor unit on Lepic, the grenade. So in that case, you could throw the grenade, bunch all the enemies together. I believe the Songs of Ray's awesome TFD content creator, go support him, guys, was the first one to ever mention this to me, that he was doing it. I'm not saying that he's the guy who created it. He might be. But he's the first one that ever mentioned to me the combo with the grenade and then shooting the TDA through it. And I've since tried it out, and yes, it's very fucking cute. It absolutely is. But again, the point is, it's almost like in a way a meme weapon, because yes, there's many other weapons that could do this, and you could also just fucking shoot a bunch of malevolent blades into the group of enemies and they die. But I do also realize that not everybody plays this game for the meta, and not everybody plays this game to shoot everything and kill it with one shot. And there is such a thing as fun factor. It's the hidden mechanic or thing that I also have on this tier list, where I also consider the fun factor of the weapon for me and as to where I place it. So for that reason, I have to also give Truly Deadly Arson its flowers, because yes, in the circumstance where it is used, it can be fun to be used, but it is a beam rifle, and therefore I fucking hate its guts. So it is what it is. We're gonna go ahead and put that in the okay category, and that's gonna be it. So there it is. There's my fucking tier list in all its glory. I don't think I have any based takes per se. I hope I didn't ruffle too many feathers or anything like that. I think that I was kind of like very fair to some of these weapons, although I'm pretty sure there's going to be a bunch of these that people are going to be disagreeing with me with. But it is what it is. Have at it. Go in the comments. Tell me which weapon you want in a different category, where you disagree with me, where you agree with me, and all of that. Let me know if there's any other tier lists you want me to do. I believe we could definitely, obviously, do a Descendant tier list, and perhaps an external components tier list is you know, in the future or something like that. But let me know what other content specifically around tier lists and stuff like that you'd like to see. I also have another video later this week coming out showing off builds for the weapons in the meta category. So these are the weapons that I've now told you are meta, so I would like to show you some builds for these, and that'll allow you to build towards them and actually start using them on your descendants, and just absolutely start demolishing the fucking game as we wait another 69 fucking months until season 3 comes out. But thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you for everything. Thank you very much for the support on the videos and all of that, and I'll see you next video. As always, fucking cheers.